Hey, Storage Rebels, what is going on? I want to talk to you real quickly today about how to minimize the property taxes that you're paying on a self-storage facility that you buy. So, quick background as I pull up my document here is that, as you know, I'm sure, when you buy a storage facility or any real estate, there are property taxes associated with that, and those are usually going to be adjusted when you buy a property because more often than not, you're not buying it for the exact same price as the assessed value. The city or county or village or town applies an assessed value to a property, and that's how they determine how much your property taxes are going to be each year. So one of the things we run into in the storage world quite often is a assessed value that is considerably lower than what the property is worth because towns and counties aren't sophisticated enough to understand that these properties are can be quite volatile in their purchase price because of the fact that they're valued based on their income stream. So if, say, a mom and pop, grandma and grandpa own a storage facility that they built for a couple $100,000, unless they're in a town where they have a very sophisticated, up-to-date assessor, their property value is only going to creep up incrementally over the time where they own it. Whereas if they run it properly and we buy it from them, it's not uncommon to buy a property for, let's say, $600,000 or $900,000, and it's only assessed at $300,000. Now, what that means for us as the buyer is clearly when we buy it for $900,000, the property taxes are more or less going to triple based on their $300,000 assessment. One of the ways that we can use, and I've done this several times successfully to get around this, it's not a guarantee, and it's completely legitimate and legal. It's just not always guaranteed to work. And I do need to caveat this by saying I am not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a tax attorney. So vet what I am sharing with you with your attorneys and accountants to make sure that this holds, that they're in agreement with what I'm telling you before you utilize it, because I can't render technical advice in those realms. All I can do is share with you my experience. And what I've had very good luck doing is what's called purchase price allocation. And if you look here on the page, just in this section, in this hypothetical instance, we're buying this property for $582,000. Now, let's pretend this property was assessed at $291,000. Well, in that case, if we just went out and bought the real property for $585,000, our property taxes would double. So what we can do is we can allocate our purchase price among the various assets that we're buying. Now, we are buying real estate, but we're also buying potentially inventory and equipment. You'll see those ones are allocated very small because those will allocating a percentage of our purchase price to inventory or equipment will negatively impact the seller's tax treatment. So we usually don't do that because we want to move this past the seller without much disruption, and we don't want to cause them to be harmed by this change. We just want to benefit us. And so if you allocate a portion of the purchase price to goodwill, covenant not to compete, customer list, trade name, phone number, all of those things have value, and we are buying them from the person. So by allocating a price to those, we can conceivably lower the impact on our property taxes when we buy. Now, I've gone so far in the past to say, if it's currently assessed at $291,000, we're going to do that. And then we're just going to, I'm not going to be able to do the math so that it adds up here in my head, but close enough. We're going to allocate purchase dollar amounts to these other areas. Now, you're still paying the seller the same amount of money. It's just only this portion is the property tax portion. And this is entirely legitimate. It stands up against audit because the simple truth is that this goodwill, this customer list, the covenant not to compete, all of these things protect the income stream, or they are the income stream when it comes to the customer list. That without those customers, you don't have revenue. And if that were the case, you'd probably only pay $291,000 for the property because that's what the building is worth, and that's what your property taxes should be based off of. Now, you're willing to pay the current owner more for the asset that they have, but it's not just real property, it's all these other things. So not to kick a dead horse, hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. I can't tell you how dramatically you can get away with these things. You got to use common sense. They've got to be reasonable. If a storage facility is empty and it has 3 customers and you try to say that customer list is worth 80 grand, I think you're going to be in trouble. But generally, as a rule of thumb, I start with trying to figure out if I can keep the real property at or near the current assessed value. Sometimes I'll give it a slight bump up just to minimize the fact that anybody goes through anything with a fine-tooth comb. And we take it from there. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, pop them in below. Happy to answer specifically and give you more insight if you need it. Till then, guys, we will see you.